hello Terry, lovely to see you again.
Welcome, Alan. Welcome to Eastwood.
Yeah.
And to be standing outside this house that is very important.
Very important to both of us.
Number one, the bridge.
Because you and I are second cousins.
Yes.
Now tell us.
My great grandfather married your great grandmother.
Yes, Rosetta.
Rosetta Tyrrell.
Yes.
And they helped to bring up all these children in. There'll be about 14 children.
Yes.
And one of them was your grandmother, Bessie.
Yes, dear Bessie, my grandma. Mama Burrows, we called her. Yeah.
Yes, and my grandmother was Emily Howitt.
Well, obviously we couldn't go in number one, the breach. It was very noisy when we did that filming, and we don't know the owners. But we can do something much better, because behind me is the second family home for the D.H. Lawrence family. It's now a museum, at least on the ground floor, and it's furnished with furniture and everything that you would expect in an early 20th century home. So let's go inside and get the feeling of what number one would have been like at the time of John Wilson and Rosetta Tyrrell. Let's go inside. What is so significant about this house as a building is it is exactly the same shaped house, sized house as number one, the breach. Because this is at the other end of the block from where number one is. So look, we've got a wonderful flavour. This would have been the front room, with of course the piano where they had all their singing. And we're now going to go into the kitchen area, and Terry and I are going to have another conversation. So here we are in the D.H. Lawrence house, where the family lived from 1887 to 1891, which is a very short time, but a significant time. What is important to we Lawrenceans, that is, people who follow D.H. Lawrence in all the sort of interesting things of his life and his work, is that we have this house. This is the second house. The first house is the birthplace house on Victoria Street, but this is this gorgeous house of which the ground floor is furnished as it would have been during the time of D.H. Lawrence's family. But significant to this is that number one, the breach, would have been something like this inside. It's exactly the same house at the other end of the breach cottages. So I'm going to hand you over now to Terry, who's going to elaborate the story about John Wilson and Rosetta Tyrrell.
Well, John Wilson originally moved his family from Tants Row on Green Hills Road to number one, the breach, with all his family. His wife died early on, so he had various housekeepers. One of the housekeepers was Rosetta Tyrrell, who accepted the job as housekeeper on the condition that John Wilson married her, and also that one of his daughters, Emily Howitt, helped to look after the rest of the children.
Now, while we're sitting in this very, very important historic house, there is another connection which Terry is just going to share with us. Over to you, Terry.
My grandmother Howitt, at 62 the breach, her brother Tom Wilson was at school with D.H. Lawrence at Bow Vale.
So what do we know about this John Wilson? What sort of character did he have?
I think he was a character that got a bit of a reputation because he once chased a man out of the pit with a pick. I don't know what the argument was about, but also he was a known poacher round Felly and all round there. And the story was that because his family were in Felly Mill Farm, he was allowed to get away with a lot of poaching and not be reprimanded because he'd got a big family.
So, Terry, this morning when we were at the Lawrence house and we were talking about the connections, which of course is wonderful to have this connection with Lawrence, there is another great connection that your family's got vis-a-vis Felly Mill Farm, which featured very heavily in Lawrence's first novel, The White Peacock. So tell us a little bit more about this Felly Mill Farm with your family connection.
Right, well, Felly Mill Farm was occupied by Joseph Wilson and Hannah, and one of their children was John Wilson, who we say senior, who eventually married Alice Chambers. And then they eventually moved to On the Breach after so many years with all these children. But John Wilson, he was coming from, I assume, his father's property and got killed by his horse in 1860. So that left Alice sort of struggling. But then in 1867, she married a Samuel Robinson, and then eventually she sold a lot of land on Green Hills Road and took her children with her to Salt Lake City. But she didn't take John Wilson, our great-grandfather, because he was already married with children, and they ended up at number 1, The Breach.
Which is where we started this morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a very strong family connection. And to think that, I mean, sadly, Felly Mill Farm, of course, doesn't exist anymore.
Well, as you see, part 2 does end up rather abruptly, but that was mainly connected with my conversations with Terry Yates. Part 3, we move back to Bessie, and then as she meets the love of her life, Willie Burroughs, and all the connections thereof. So now, please proceed to part 3 for that.